Rebellion to God's authority and the lawless attitude that undergirds it has been in man since the garden. One can easily trace this mutinous mindset down through the history of the antediluvian period. Man became so corrupted that by Noah's time, every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. The world was swept clean of its wickedness, and the Lord began all over again with Noah and his sons. However, the germ of rebellion was passed along to their descendants and soon emerged in the insurrection of Babel. Once again, God had to intervene, this time to confuse mankind's languages and spread them out across the world. From this great scattering, nations formed and civilizations grew. In the meantime, the Lord found a man named Abraham right there in Mesopotamia who would prove faithful to him. God promised to make a nation of his descendants. A few centuries later, the Lord used Moses to lead the Jewish people out of the polytheistic empire of Egypt and into the Sinai wilderness. It was there that the Lord instituted his plan to form a nation of people he could train in his ways. They would become a showcase for his goodness and power to worlds steeped in satanic darkness. What a tremendous revelation of God's character this could have been to the world had the Jewish people humbled themselves and submitted to his authority. Unfortunately, this is not how things went. What a tremendous day it was when the Lord descended upon the mountaintop in fire and power. The Jewish people heard the voice of Yahweh and received the 10 Commandments that would remain a fixture in the nation of Israel for centuries to come. As the people stood at a distance, Moses approached the thick cloud enveloping the mountaintop. It probably took several hours for God to give Moses the additional laws needed to govern the people. Eventually he emerged and read the laws the Lord had given him. And all the people answered with one voice and said, "All the words which the Lord has spoken, we will do." Moses probably felt that this was finally the turning point he had been praying for so earnestly. With this newfound commitment, the Lord called Moses and Aaron, along with Aaron's 2 sons and 70 elders of the people, to ascend the mountain. And they saw the God of Israel, and under his feet there appeared to be a pavement of sapphire, as clear as the sky itself, and they saw God. It should be noted that the word for saw here is not the typical Hebrew word for see. It is chazah, which is usually used throughout the Old Testament to describe men of God who were given a miraculous sight into the spiritual realm. While Moses remained on the mountain with God, Aaron and the others came down to the people, sharing what they had just experienced. The entire camp must have been in awe over what they heard. I can't help but think that this tremendous vision of the Almighty was a precursor of how things could have turned out. Perhaps if they had retained this newfound attitude of obedience, Yahweh would have dwelt in the camp with the people in this powerful way. Unfortunately, heartbreaking apostasy was about to break out. Not 40 days after their solemn commitment to obey the Lord, the people would have an orgy in the very same spot where God had visited them. Surely this must be one of the most egregious examples of lawlessness in the Old Testament. In one sense, perhaps it's understandable. These people had languished in Egyptian darkness for some 400 years. The only law they understood was what was capriciously administered by the whim of their taskmasters. Still, having witnessed God decimating the greatest empire on earth and opening up a sea right in front of their eyes, One would expect that it would be a long time before they would consider offending such a mighty God. Not only did they remain unaffected and unmoved by these experiences, but their rebellion only seemed to gain strength in the days ahead. Regarding this experience, Watchman Nee wrote, "God could forbear their murmurings in the wilderness 10 times, but he would not allow them to resist his authority. Many sins God can bear and forbear, but rebellion he cannot stand, because rebellion is the principle of death, the principle of Satan." It seems clear from incidents that occurred after this that the Jewish people maintained their lawless attitude for the rest of their time in the wilderness. If anyone ever feels tempted to accuse the Lord of being too harsh, they need only read these words that sum up his experience with this evil generation. How often they rebelled against him in the wilderness and grieved him in the desert. Again and again, they tempted God and pained the Holy One of Israel. So he brought their days to an end in futility and their years in sudden terror. Tragically, the 40-year episode in the wilderness did not cure Israel of her rebellion. Most of the stories and anecdotes related throughout the historical narrative section of the Old Testament reveal that the vast majority of Israelites showed the same marked lack of respect for and obedience to the Torah as that generation in the wilderness. God certainly had his men, those who submitted their hearts and lives to him, men like Joshua, Samuel, David, Elijah, Hezekiah, and others. But they were the exception, not the rule. By and large, the people rebelled against the Lord and cast his law behind their backs. As God solemnly warned earlier generations, flagrantly disregarding his law would cost the people dearly. Since revelations of his love and mercy made little impression on his people's hearts, he was forced to bring this wayward nation to the brink of distress time and time again. But no matter what Yahweh did to win his people's loyalty, they simply would not change their ways. Yahweh lamented the futility of all his efforts through the prophet Amos. "I gave you cleanness of teeth in all your cities, yet you did not return to me. I also withheld the rain from you, yet you did not return to me. I struck with blight and mildew your fig trees and your olive trees, the locust devoured, yet you did not return to me. I sent among you a pestilence after the manner of Egypt. I killed your young men with the sword and carried away your horses, yet you did not return to me. I overthrew some of you, as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, yet you did not return to me." Eventually, the Lord had had enough of their persistent lawlessness and sent Nebuchadnezzar to conquer and carry into captivity the people of Judah. What are we to glean from the tragic history of Israel? What are we to make of their stubborn refusal to submit to Yahweh's authority, despite his powerful deliverances, his glorious revelations, his faithful love, even his severe chastening? If all of these things were insufficient to form a people who would listen to him and obey him, what else could be done? These accounts of Israel's ancient rebellion have been passed down to us not so much for the sake of maintaining a historical record, but as a mirror for our own lives. Have God's dealings with us produced a life of obedience? Or would it also have to be said about us that, like them, we have rebelled against the Lord and cast his law behind our backs? The revelation of God's glory, the instances of his protection and preservation, the demonstrations of his mercy, even the consequences of sin, all of these are meant to produce something inside of us, something that we as fallen, naturally rebellious humans desperately need. In the next episode, will see just what that need is: a genuine love of God's law.